What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the College Basketball Conference Tournament Betting Preview Part 4. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today, fellow BBOC co-host Tanner McGrath. Today we will get to the America East, which is primarily why Tanner is here, the Big Sky, and then at the end, Mike Calabrese will share his thoughts on the Southland and whether or not it's just a McNeese State coronation. They are minus 550 to win the league, which is played on their home court. I was trying to look up the biggest favorite ever was tweeting about it. The one that comes to mind was Gonzaga in 2021. They were like minus 1,200 to win it. That dominant team. They ended up winning it, I think, both games. And that format is very conducive. Same with the Southland to the top seed. They ended up beating BYU, who was decent that year, by 10 in the final. Mary's was pretty down compared to some of their years. And then you brought up Vermont.
In 22, yeah. They were minus 900, I think. Yeah.
So, McNeese isn't the biggest favorite ever, but they are up there. We'll save the best for last. We'll save the America East for last. Let's start in the Big Sky, which will take place between March 8th and 12th. Kicks off on Saturday, I believe. Is that Saturday?
That's not, yeah.
I'm losing track of days.
The playing games are Saturday, and then the quarterfinals are Sunday and Monday.
Yep. Championship on the 12th. All these games will be held in Boise, Idaho, and all 10 teams make it. The top 6 get a bye to the quarters, which, as you mentioned, are played on Sunday and Monday. The first round games are Weber State, Sacramento State, and Northern Arizona against Eastern Washington. Top overall seed, Northern Colorado, is the favorite. They're plus 135. Just looking at one book here. Montana is the 2 seed. They're plus 210. Portland State, the 3, 6-1. Montana State, 8-1. Idaho State, plus 950. That's the 4-5 matchup, Montana State and Idaho State. And then you get into some very big long shots, including Idaho at 30-1, even though they have a bye. And then you have some of your dregs of the league. Northern Arizona, Eastern Washington, Weber State. Sacramento State is beyond hard. They're 250-1 to win this league. So let me see. Where do we want to start here? Let's start with first of all, I don't have any interest in the bottom 4 that play in the first round. I just mentioned Sacramento State. They're very, very bad. Very, very bad. They don't have any shot of winning this. They did split with Weber State during the regular season. That's the first round matchup. Weber State, Blaze Threet is a really good point guard. He just doesn't have enough help offensively. They've had injuries on that front, and it's just a really down year for Weber State. Northern Arizona, Eastern Washington is the other first round matchup. For what it's worth, Diego Camposano, he missed the final 2 games for Northern Arizona. He's not that important, but it's worth mentioning. They just don't have the defense, and I don't trust them away from Flagstaff. And Eastern Washington, a down year for them as well. Their only wins away from home, Weber State and Sacramento State. That's it. So I don't think any are a threat to win this league. Do you have anything that you want to mention with the bottom 4 teams before we get to the meat and potatoes?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, so is Eastern Washington a corpse, or did they just get cooked by bad shooting variance in the final 5 games? They lost their final 5, but they shot horrific from 3, and then the opponents shot like 40% from 3. And I don't know, against Northern Arizona, they're a decent rim offense. They're good in cutting and posting sets. And Northern Arizona can get got at the rim, but at the same time, the Lumberjacks swept the season series. Wasn't close. But Northern Arizona also shot well in both games. So I was kind of interested in Eastern Washington, seeing if maybe there could be a an undervalued first round team against Northern Arizona, but I'm not entirely sold yet. That's my only thought on the Saturday games.
I probably will have nothing there in either game, to be honest.
That's understandable.
But let's get to the meat and potatoes. So I actually, if you asked me just straight up, who do I think is going to win this league? I think it's Montana.
Agree.
I think they are the best team.
Agree.
And if you look, they're since January 20th, they're 11-1. They have been the best team per Torvik. They're 94th nationally. Northern Colorado, the 1 seed, is 122nd. And what is the reasoning there? Well, one, they've shot the 3 really well. It's not a 3-point reliant offense, but they've shot 42% from 3. But Northern Colorado's also shot right up there. I think 41.5% from 3 over that same time span. I think in the month of February, they were like 45%. But what changed with Montana, who went 11-1 to finish the year? Their only loss was at Portland State in a game that they should have won. I think they were up 10 or 11 with 5 to go, and they got 3-point variance in that game. I think they went 5 of 25, and Portland State made 50% of their threes, maybe, if I'm recalling correctly. What changed? Well, there was a lineup change, and they put Kai Johnson into their starting lineup, and he's been their best offensive player. Money Williams, who's an electric factory.
One of the best
him coming off,
low major point guards. Yeah, mid-major point guards.
Him coming off the bench, it just seemed to spark this offense. And he's kind of like a Curtis Jones, can come in and then just fill it up. He can go for 30 on any night. Montana, so over their past 12 games, they've been a top 30 offense nationally. So, I mean, this offense is absolutely cooking. They are small, so they could be had on the glass, which is always a concern. And I don't know if they can keep shooting at this clip, but like I said, they're not an overly reliant 3-point offense, and they will take away the 3 on D, which is, I think, important for a team. If you're going to bet like a 1 or a 2 seed, reduces the risk of them just getting 3-point variance, because they are very good 3-point defenses in terms of volume. So I think Montana's the best team. Now, am I running to bet them at, I saw some people bet plus 300, plus 320. I don't mind that one on open. It's been hit a little bit. Am I running to bet them now? No, not at this current price. Northern Colorado, the 1 seed, they want to play fast. Their D is pretty shaky outside of rebounding.
They're an okay interior defense, but across the board,
they're okay there.
Yeah, they don't do a lot well.
And they got cooked at home by Montana in this revamped offense, while Montana has been on this run. And like I said, Northern Colorado has been shooting their brains out of late. So, I prefer Montana. And look, Montana theoretically, seed-wise, has the 3 seed. But I actually think they match up well with Portland State. Portland State has the best defense in the league. Pressure. They want to pressure you. They want to force turnovers. Basically, what Portland State is, force turnovers and try to get offensive rebounds. The offensive rebounding path might work against Montana, but Montana can handle their pressure. And I think that really neuters Portland State's upside.
And their defense is super overvalued, in my opinion. I mean, opponents shot, 27% from 3 against them on high volume, while they ranked 355th nationally in open 3 rate allowed. They have to be overvalued. I'm out on Portland State in this tournament, I'll tell you that.
I agree. I don't want any part of Portland State. I would love Montana in that rematch. And then I would like Montana against Northern Colorado. But I don't see any value in those teams, but we'll get to I think the most intriguing matchup, Idaho, for what it's worth, who plays Portland State, super inexperienced team. They're very young. They got a decent offense. They will chuck threes. So they have some variance to them in that aspect, but unspeakably bad defense. They play no defense. They were swept by both Montana and Portland State during the regular season, for what it's worth. So before we get to the 4-5 matchup, which I think is pretty intriguing, you want to share any other thoughts on any of the teams we just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with you on all accounts. If you had to pick between the favorites, I'd go with Montana. I love how Coach Travis, runs that offense. It's a very pretty motion-based offense. It generates a ton at the rim and plenty of unguarded catch and shoot jumpers. So I do think their 40% three-point rate is somewhat sustainable. We're both huge Money Williams guys at point. I think that backcourt, the trio in that backcourt, is pretty fantastic. And they have shot makers really at all 5 positions, depending on what lineup they decide to roll with. And you mentioned it. They're a good 3-point defense. They're the league's best rim and 3 defense per shot quality, which I think is important against some of the top teams in this conference. And they have slightly better odds than Northern Colorado, who is probably the rightful favorite, but I think it's closer than the odds would indicate. And
I agree.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that I mentioned how Portland State, I think their defense is super overvalued based on just the fact that nobody has hit a 3 against them on high volume. And the Vandals are they're a good spacing and shot making offense. I mean, they generate a super high catch and shoot rate. So if anyone could force some aggression upon the Vikings, why not the Vandals? But again, you mentioned they got swept in the regular season meeting. They lost by 7 at home despite shooting 38% from 3 on over 30 attempts. So it's hard to really get behind Idaho against the team that we both want to fade. But yeah, I like Montana. I would like Montana in that semifinal matchup, and I would like them over.
Idaho could beat them. If their threes are falling, Idaho could beat them. They also could get blown out.
Exactly.
But, I wouldn't hate them if you want to throw a little as a money line underdog in that game. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that there's any championship upside with Idaho because of their inexperience and primarily because of their defense. I just don't think that they would be able to. What did they do against Montana this year? They were probably they played them close, surprisingly. But this is before Montana turned into an inferno.
Yeah,
they lost by 2 and 5. Let's see. I mean, they made their threes in that game. Huh. Might have to dig into that a little more. But they did get swept. Montana's is a different team over the past month and a half. Idaho got them early. So, yeah, I could see Idaho beating Portland State for sure. So if you want to go top heavy, Montana is the look over Northern Colorado. Here's where I'm really conflicted, is that I had about a week ago or so, I was like, the teams before the bracket came out, before seeding, before odds, I said the 2 teams that I probably am going to be looking at as a potential longer-ish shot in the Big Sky are Montana State and Idaho State.
Yep.
Naturally, they play each other. Idaho State, I love Dylan Darling at point guard. He's amazing guard who can just take over a game. One of the most underrated mid-major players in the league, in the country, in my opinion. And they're rebounding monsters, which I also like. So they're going to be decent from a shot quality perspective. So, and Darling's going to he's going to have the ball in his hands the whole game. I mean, he's going to play basically the whole game. He's a player if you haven't seen him play. And then Montana State, I was trying to figure out, okay, who is this Montana State team? I feel like they should be better all year. Just couldn't really figure out what's wrong with them. I mean, you look at it, they play 5 out. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. They almost drop defense. They're going to take away threes. But there's just something that's been off with them all year. Now, over the past 2 games, their starting center, Brandon Walker, hasn't played. And, I mean, this is a guy his usage rate is through the roof. He's top 10 in
second nationally in percentage of possessions used. Yeah.
36. So he hasn't played the last 2 games. He's their leading scorer, their highest usage player. They won both. They beat Sacramento State, which who cares, by 27 on the road, and then they beat Idaho at home by 15. Here's what their head coach said about it. Walker was healthy and available to play in both the past 2 games. Keeping him off the floor was a matter of finding the best lineups to execute the style of play and the vision that we have. We're making decisions that we think will help the team be successful. Brandon has been an integral part of a lot of our success as well. That's not lost on any of us. He's had a great attitude about this, and he's got to stay ready for his next opportunity. So then I started digging into a little more, and like apparently, like some of the advanced metrics, like efficiency perspective, don't paint the best picture of Walker. Apparently, might have been some locker room issues, allegedly through the rumor mill. I don't know. So are they better without him? That's a real possibility. Now it's a 2-game sample size, but like, was there chemistry issues? Can they play more unselfishly and just more of how they want to run offense without Walker? I don't know. It's a 2-game sample size with one of the games against Sacramento State. So I don't know. But that throws a huge wrench into this, which makes me say, like, okay, do I want to buy the upside of Montana State maybe being better than they were without their highest usage player who led them in scoring? Or is there something off with this team and then it makes me want to buy Idaho State? So I don't know. I don't have strong conviction now on what's going on with Montana State. So I think Montana State, Idaho State is like a coin flip. If I had like strong conviction on who I think is going to win that game, now what the deciding factor could be, you can get a better price with Idaho State, so you can get plus 950 instead of plus 800. So maybe that's what I'll end up doing. But I could see either of these teams beating Northern Colorado. And by the way, for what it's worth, during the regular season, Montana State and Idaho State, Montana State won on their home court 74-69. Idaho State won on their home court 70-67. So probably going to be a close game. So that matchup and what's going on with Walker has my brain in a pretzel. So curious to get your thoughts.
Well, I don't know what's going on with Montana State, but I'm all in on Idaho State plus 950, plus 850. You mentioned two of the reasons why. First of all, yeah, the Bengals are shot volume monsters. Like they don't turn the ball over. They force turnovers at a high rate, despite not pressing much, and they obliterate the offensive boards. I mean, I think they posted a near 40% offensive rebounding rate in conference play. They finished conference play with a plus 143 rebounding and turnover differential. That's more than double the second place team in the league. They probably, the second reason, they have the league's best player in Dylan Darling. Like you said, he averaged 21-6 this year, 2 steals per game. He is a bucket in isolation on super high volume. He draws fouls like crazy. He's a guy that could just, get you points at the end of games, like carry you. He shoots 38% from deep, and he just runs this offense to perfection. He has a 35% assist rate, barely throws the ball away.
High major transfer, by the way. He was at Washington State.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But I think the biggest reason why I'm going to be on Idaho State is they enter in great form. They won 4 of their final 5 games with the best net rating in the league during that stretch, plus 15. They ranked in the top 50 nationally in Haslametrics momentum metric. And that's despite shooting under
3-point shooting.
Yeah, despite shooting under 30% from 3 while their opponents shot 40%. They're not a good defense, but they were snake bitten in conference play. I mean, opponents shot over 38% from deep. Shot quality projected that should have been closer to 33% based on the quality of shots allowed, and their defensive profile might look a lot better. I mean, if that positive regression hits, I think the Bengals make a run. I think they beat Northern Colorado. I mean, the path won't be easy. Like you said, Montana State, they're a good team. Lineup changes, they could be better. They got swept by Northern Colorado, but they took them to overtime, I think, earlier this year. But I just think they have a super high floor with Darling and the shot volume advantages. And I think they're undervalued because they're playing great ball despite brutal 3-point shooting splits. So I like Idaho State.
All right, I'll join you. I'm going to sprinkle on the Bengals. I do love Darling. And I do think that both top seeds
I think they're a great team in a tournament setting, the way they play.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's get to my official pick, Montana, betting value. And for the show, we're going Idaho State.
Same.
All right, let's get to the America East, your beloved league. And there's a lot to talk about with the America East this year. Oh, by the way, these are two leagues where you're not getting a win in the NCAA tournament. I'm sorry. I mean, you could, but when's the last time an America East team won?
UMBC.
Oh yeah, UMBC. You're right.
Yeah,
I
Virginia.
apologize.
Yeah.
When's the last time a Big Sky team won a tournament game?
I have no idea, honestly.
Yep. 1975, Montana made the round of 32 in 2006.
Yep.
So, doesn't mean they can't win, but this league has not performed well historically. And the America East has had more success than the Big Sky over the past 15 years. All right, but let's get to the America East tournament. That's why I'm sure we got some new listeners for this episode that are like Tanner fans or America East fans that know that they have to tune in to get your insight. So welcome. And for what it's worth, the America East tournament, 8 teams make it, which means poor old NJIT, who did end the season on a high note with a buzzer beater.
Tim
right?
Moore
They won at
Jr.
the buzzer in their finale.
Yeah, Tim Moore Jr. Yeah, he had a great year. A great end to the year.
But NJIT will not be competing. The other 8 teams there are no buys. This is a straight up 8-team bracket that will be played on campus sites, higher seed host. It's also worth noting that they reseed after each round, which is important. It's also depth isn't a question here because they're going to play first round Saturday, semifinals Tuesday, championship Saturday, which is important for a team like UMass Lowell, who we'll talk about. It doesn't have any depth. It's not like they have to win 3 games in 3 days or something like that. But we'll talk about them in just a moment. Bryant is the favorite, the rightful favorite here. They were clearly the best team during the regular season, the best offense, the best defense. You gotta love Earl Timberlake, long on defense. They're even money to win this. They start with UMBC. So let's start there. UMBC has injury concerns. Now, UMBC hung with Bryant
twice,
both times.
Mm-hmm.
And because UMBC has no defense and they want to play fast. Bryant wants to play fast. And like UMBC just tries to win the game 90 to 88 against Bryant. So they can kind of like play their game. But are they fully healthy is the question. So what are your thoughts there? Because Johnson is out, right?
Not just Johnson, but I think Odunwu too. So 2 starters, 2 of their most important players. Bryce Johnson was a first team all-conference candidate to me. And Odunwu
he had a bad fall. Did you have an update on him?
Not yet. From what I've heard recently is that they stretchered him in that game, but it was precautionary. He had feelings in all of his extremities, so he should be okay. It was a scary fall at the time, but I think it's precautionary. But I have no idea if he's going to play in this game. I haven't heard an update since then. All I know is that he is okay. Odunwu ankle injury. I'm also going to assume he's out for this game, but I can't be 100% sure. But I'm leaning.
That hurts their defense. They're already lacking defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Odunwu, like the entire team is awful at defense. None of them can defend, and Odunwu can kind of defend down low, but he's small. But all of a sudden, then you take him out and you put in Louis Jordan, who is a lifeless interior defender, who is just as small, but he does kind of shoot the 3. So all of a sudden, UMBC scores like crazy. Let's talk about Bryant, though, the more important team. You're right. The rightful favorites in this tournament, they're minus 110 for a reason. First regular season champ, other than Vermont, since 2016. And it's all about length, size, and athleticism. Every starter stands over 6'6". They're all elite off the bounce. They all can handle the rock. They're laterally and vertically mobile. Most of them can shoot. they have more versatility than like any mid-major or low-major team. I mean, Earl Timberlake is among the best point forwards in the country. Barry Evans has been shockingly athletic all year, especially off the bounce. Connor Withers has put it together as a 3-and-D guy. The center rotation of Kevon Kramer and Keyshawn Mitchell have held their own while providing no shortage of athletic highlights. The biggest advantage they have is their shot volume monsters. They lead the league in offensive turnover rate. They leverage their athleticism into tons of offensive rebounds. Their plus 140 rebounding plus turnover differential in conference play is double the second place team. And on the defensive end, they leverage that versatility into switchability. So they switch everything. They deny catch and shoot opportunities. And they isolation and rim funnel. And then they turn that into verticality, where they just block everything at the rim. I mean, they had a 20% block rate in league play. It's insane. And part of the reason why Timberlake is so good is just how good of a defensive player he is as well. I mean, he blocked 2 shots per game to go along with his 14, 10, and 5 line. He was great in isolation, switched on the perimeter well, held up in post-up defense. He was a do-it-all guy in my pick for Conference Player of the Year. With Bryant, I guess I have 2 questions. I mean, I still have questions about their offensive execution. They're super reliant on Rafael Pinzon's shooting and spacing, and the offense shrivels when he's not on the court. I mean, their offensive rating drops 19 points without him because they rely so heavily on mismatch hunting via isolation and handoff sets. And so they end up in the mid-range a lot. And without Pinzon out there to kind of stretch out the defense, they get stuck in crowded lanes, taking runners and hook shots in the middle of the court. But I will say that Phil Martelli Jr. has done just an amazing job in the wake of Jared Grasso's dismissal. A lot of people forget that Martelli took over the program like a week before last season started. And he transformed the defense in a year, just from switching from Grasso's passive zone scheme to this aggressive switching paint swarming denial. And I've seen Martelli mix in a lot more floppy and curl sets in the half court, which I really like for this unique group of wing talent. And hopefully they lean more into that in half court creation because they're still relatively inefficient in transition offense, which is weird for a team that loves to push. Second question I have is, did they peak too early? They posted a plus 25 net rating in the first 8 legs of that double round robin. That number dropped to plus 12 in the second. And that number would have been a lot lower if they didn't obliterate New Hampshire in the regular season finale. I thought, you talked about UMBC. They did a great job of leveraging their smaller guards in their attacking kick, put everyone rotation scheme to take advantage of Bryant's rim funneling without getting blocked at the rim. They kind of use their craftiness down low. And that seems like the way to beat Bryant's defense. Then again, Bryant did shoot 28% from 3 on those final 8 games. So they were a little unlucky, yet still went 6-2. It'll be really hard to beat Bryant. I mean, they're amazing, but I don't think they're immune to getting picked off. I mean, their first round matchup against the Retrievers could be tough. I mean, even though they're not healthy, unfortunately, but played them tough both times, like you said. So Bryant's the rightful favorite, but I don't think they're a prohibitive favorite, so to speak.
Yeah, and they will get home court advantage. They're even money. I don't think that's an egregious price, but I don't see any value. Yeah, I don't see any. I'm not running to bet it. They will get to play all their games at home. UMBC dealing with injuries, but by the way, if Bryant does end up winning this league, I don't know, off the top of your head, put you on a spot here. Like, you don't have to name a specific team, but like, what type of team would you want to either bet them or to, see them maybe giving a scare or pulling off an upset?
It won't happen, but I like the matchup against Auburn a lot. Auburn struggles on the defensive glass. Bryant can take advantage of it. Auburn is a rim-reliant flex motion offense. Bryant likes to play at the rim on defense. I think that Bryant could stay within a 25-point spread against Auburn. Absolutely. I kind of like that matchup.
Are you calling for the outright UMBC upset?
I wish, but not this year. East had a down year. It just kind of sucks. I thought we were going to be really good, but we were bad from the jump, really.
Well, it was bad from the jump until recently was Vermont, and they've really turned it around. This is the team that was really struggling, and just to illustrate how much better Vermont has been since February 1st. You mentioned kind of the late season swoon for Bryant. Since February 1st, Bryant's 7-2 199th per Torvik. Vermont 9-0, 117th in the country. Now, part of that, Brian shot 30% from three. Vermont shot close to 38%, which they didn't come close to all year. The other thing with Vermont, so I'll just ask you straight up. Vermont, by the way, they are the 2 seed. They will start at home with New Hampshire. Vermont's plus 170. They're the second favorite here. New Hampshire, they're just probably not going to score. They think they got destroyed by Vermont in both. So, I don't think Vermont's at any threat of losing that game. But is this turnaround for Vermont real? Is Bogues, Shamir Bogues, is he out? And how important is he? What are your thoughts on your Catamounts?
Yeah, for anyone listening that hasn't listened to this episode in the past, I am from Vermont. I'm a Catamount super fan, and I love this team. And their turnaround is unbiasedly 100% real. Since their season swung entirely on February 1st, they did 2 things. First, they fixed their rebounding and turnover issues. So as a down-tempo, 5-out, low volume, but high-efficiency team, losing the shot volume battle is a death sentence in those game scripts. But once they started rebounding and not turning the ball over, they evened out the shot volume battle while beginning to dictate the pace again. And the second half of the season gave us some of the most classic John Becker specials that I've seen. And he, just totally turned the season around again like he's done so many times. But they slowed everyone down. They mucked up every game, and they leaned on their super disciplined defense, which is an elite unit because Iliri Eofalei patrols the paint and blocks 2 shots a game. Nick Fiorello, who I've been really hard on in the past, has really improved his interior defense this year, and I've just been so impressed with him. He's been a total stud as the 5th-year leader of this team. But they play really compact behind those 2, and they allow nothing on the interior. They just 20 paint points per game allowed over their final 5 games. Meanwhile, on the perimeter, as you mentioned, Shamir Bogues is still among the best on-ball perimeter defenders in the mid-majors, and they were able to leverage their super lengthy guard corps to contest everything despite playing so compact. Over 70% of opposing catch and shoot opportunities were guarded. That's the 3rd highest mark nationally, which is so surprising when you consider they just pack it in. It's a great balance that they have. Second thing that they did right, they started running the entire offense through TJ Hurley, who has been nothing but tremendous stepping up in the absence of TJ Long. He averaged nearly 20 points per game over the second half of the season while shooting nearly 50% from deep on 8 attempts per game. He was amazing creating his own shot from anywhere on the court. His usage rate skyrocketed, but it didn't hurt his efficiency at all. He was a first-team all-conference guy as a top scoring option, and I'm so proud of his development. He's Canadian, by the way. Shout out to him and his dad, Mike. I met them in RJ's last year in Burlington. But he saved this offense, which was the league's best in January, as you mentioned. John Becker did a tremendous job turning this ship around. Like you said, they've been perfect since February with the best offensive and defensive efficiency marks in the league. But the elephant in the room, Shamir Bogues is hurt. Went down against UMBC, didn't play in the regular season finale. I don't know how hurt he is, but at the time, it seemed really bad, looked bad. From what I was hearing from inside the program, it was bad. That said, the most recent update I got is that he's a game time decision for Saturday and that he's increasingly optimistic, quote unquote, for the playoffs. He's played through injuries before, and he's played through injuries before, often admirably. He's a really tough guy, but I am worried nonetheless. I mean, his defense at the point of attack is basically irreplaceable. His on-ball dribble and interior creation is basically irreplaceable. And he's been shooting closer to 40% from 3 in the second half of the year, which is huge for a team that had spacing and shot-making issues for the entire season. He's one of the 2 most important players on this team, both ways. So you have 2 options in his stead, basically. The first is Jace Rockamore, who I've always really liked. He's a steady ball handler, steady second string table setter. He does all the little defensive things right. His jumper broke this year. I don't know what happened. He didn't hit a 3 for 3 months. He's course corrected a bit in recent weeks, but he needs to hit some jumpers badly for this 5-out offense to stay alive without Bogues. The second option is Sean Blake, who freshman guard, wicked high upside. He is very explosive, great off the bounce, can shoot the 3, but he's also a freshman. So he makes dumbfounded mistakes all the time, consistently throws the ball away. And although he's been a sneaky good defender at times for his small stature, they kind of hide him where you can. Like, neither of these options is nearly as gifted defensively as Bogues. So I don't know what's going to happen. If Bogues is out, the only thing I could say is that I think Rockamore and Blake could maybe recreate his offense. I don't think they can recreate his defense. So I might actually bet some catamount overs in this tournament. I mean, in the last 2 games where Bogues missed 1.5, both went over. Hey, the offense looks better, man. And
I know. I'm thinking back to just every Vermont team I've ever watched in my life.
Yeah, I mean, they grind it down. But Becker also has been more willing this year to, like, when things get ugly, start pressing, grabbing more offensive rebounds, pushing the pace, forcing turnovers, mixing in more press zone. But those are my catamount thoughts. I would consider betting them over Brian if I knew Bogues was healthy, but I don't.
Without that certainty.
Yeah.
With that uncertainty, it's a pass.
Pretty much.
Okay. Let's go back up to the top half of the bracket. Bryant, UMBC, we mentioned that's the 1-8. The 4-5, and it doesn't really matter which order we go because they reseed. But the 4-5 is Albany hosting Binghamton. Albany 16-1 to win this league. Binghamton is 50-1 to win the conference tournament. Albany, the question with the Great Danes, who gave UConn a scare that one year? Jamar Wilson. Yeah, they played Connecticut, the 1 seed. They were like tied in the second half. It was electric. They ended up losing by 13. 06, yeah, Jamar Wilson. So the Great Danes, question with them, by the way, another injury question, is Justin Neely playing? He's important.
Yeah, I've heard. Well,
he was practicing, right? I just saw
yeah,
a tweet that he was practicing, and
he's practicing. Okay. And my source said he was going to play in the regular season finale, and then I guess he ended up sitting out, probably for precautionary reasons. I don't think that game actually meant much in terms of seeding. So I'm going to assume that he's in as of now.
Okay, let's assume that he is in. What are your thoughts on Albany and or this matchup with Binghamton?
Yeah, so I didn't love any first round matchup that much. We've talked about just injury issues across the board. Vermont, UMBC. You could probably you could maybe take Lowell in that game against Maine, but we'll talk about them in a second. But
we're gonna get to Lowell.
Yeah, when the bracket opened and I saw that Albany was hosting Binghamton, I was pretty excited about potentially backing the Danes. I think the line might open a little bit higher than I want. I think they're projected -6. But if we can get a decent line, maybe we can get 5. I would love to hop on the Danes because I've been high on them all year. I love how athletic they are.
You have.
I love top scorer Amari Marshall. Byron Joshua is small, but he's been awesome running point for them. DeMar Langford is an absolute weapon as a bully ball post-up wing. They are shot volume monsters. They're the second best shot volume team in the league behind Bryant. They crash the boards. They don't turn the ball over, thanks to Joshua, and they force plenty of turnovers. They never really put it together this year because of really 4 reasons. 1, injuries. They were on and off injured. 2, non-existent interior defense behind no size in a drop coverage scheme. 3, they had some tough shoot. Yeah, they had some tough shooting luck. I mean, especially for Marshall, who has always been a good shooter and shot like 28% from 3 for most of the year. And finally, bad coaching. Dwayne Killings is kind of a nightmare, especially in in-game situations. So that said, they started to put things together down the stretch. They won 4 of their final 6. They ranked 3rd in the America East in net rating during that stretch. Their interior defense was like surprisingly good. They ranked 3rd in paint points per game allowed over the final 5. They started rebounding much better, and they did okay at not fouling, which they're usually a disaster at. They got Frosh forward, I think his name's Batista Giroux. Anyways, he got him on the court more often. He provides some actual size as a 7-footer. And it's all surprising considering their final 5 conference opponents shot 40% from deep. So that interior defense, those improvements there are going to be super important against Binghamton, which is an uber rim reliant, cut heavy, downhill driving offense behind a bevy of just monstrous wings like Taimu Shennery, Gavin Walsh, Chris Walker, etc. And they get to the line a ton. So hopefully Albany can avoid that. But of greater importance, Binghamton doesn't have a point guard right now since Jaden Lemon went down earlier in the year. So they've run into this massive turnover issue because they're running the entire offense through the wings as ball handlers, specifically Chenery, who
their turnover margin is a nightmare.
Yeah. He's been a good facilitator, but they're just throwing the ball away constantly. And that's going to be a problem against Albany's press-happy scheme. And it's going to fuel the Danes' up-tempo attack, right? I mean, I think across the two matchups, let's see here. Yeah, Binghamton threw the ball away 36 times, and Albany scored 34 points on 32 transition possessions. So even though I'm not like fully convinced in Albany's half-court offense against Binghamton's defense, if they can force turnovers, hang on the defensive interior, and then live in transition, I really like this matchup for the trending upwards Danes. And like, I'm just not sold on Binghamton. I mean, their entire season like swung on shooting variance. They got cooked on defensive shooting variance early in the year and started 1-5. Then everything swung too far the other way, and they won 6 of 8. And then everything swung back in the final 2 games where they were blown out by Lowell and lost outright at home to lowly NJIT. Lavelle Sanders did a pretty good job with this group on the whole. I think he's a good coach, but I don't think they ever found a good all-around balance. I never really liked their dribble defense. I think they're flat-footed. I think they can be dynamic at offense at times, but they don't feel like a team that's good in spacing and shooting. So I see the path for Albany winning this one by double digits, basically.
I would tend to agree. Do you see any upside with Albany and or value at 16-1? They did win at Bryant.
They won at Bryant when Pinzone went down in the second half. And and look, like Albany played amazing defense in that game. That was incredible. Would you
rather have, say you had an Albany ticket, would you rather have them go to Vermont or to Bryant?
To Bryant. And the reason why is because Vermont is so disciplined on the defensive glass, and they never turn the ball over. And if you Albany needs turnovers, and they need offensive rebounds to compete, which gives them a high floor. But also, I don't trust Killings. Like I love the upside for this team, but they never reached it, and I kind of doubt that they're going to start hitting shots now, even though they started to shoot a little bit better down the stretch. But they're just so bad at their spacing. They're so reliant on bully ball from Neely and Casper and Langford. So I would rather have the ticket that we should talk about now.
All right, so let's get to the 3-6 matchup. Maine will host UMass Lowell, who the Riverhawks have been absolutely cursed all year long. And this will be a rematch of a game that we just saw at Maine. It'll be right back in Orono. Am I saying that right? Do people say Orono?
Orono.
Wow, I've always been pronouncing it wrong.
Yep.
Add it to the list.
Like Merrimack, yeah.
Yeah, I get so much slack for Merrimack. So they just played, and you're never going to guess what happened. Never going to guess. Maine won by 1. And you're never going to guess what happened in the first meeting. Maine won by 1 in overtime. And you're never going to guess what happened to UMass Lowell all year long. They lost by 1. They lost to Albany by 2 in overtime. They lost to New Hampshire by 1. They lost to Bryant by 1 on a horrendous foul call at the buzzer. This team easily could have finished much higher in the standings. I think this would be a good chance for them to hit the reset button. They are still super experienced. They still have a ton of talent on this team with Brooks and Mincy. Senior laden outside of the point guard spot. By the way, is Quincy Clark out for the year?
I'll talk about that in a second, but yes.
But I think that they might be better without him.
They're much better without him. Yes.
Okay. So, I think that that's a good thing that he's not back. And because you don't have to worry about depth. They don't have any depth. But like I mentioned, they play Saturday, then midweek, and then Saturday again if they're going to win this tournament. I think that now if they win, you got to keep in mind, when you're looking at the bracket, it messes with your brain. But if they win, they're going to play Bryant. And unless Bryant loses to UMBC. but they're going to play the highest remaining seed because they're the 7. But against Bryant, I mean, they can play their game against. Like, now, the UMass Lowell defense stinks. It's not good. But their offense is very good. And they could play their game against Bryant, try to win a game in the 80s. And they should have confidence. I mean, they should have just beat Bryant. It wasn't their home court, but they literally did beat them. And then there was
worst
a horrendous
foul
call
ever.
at the end.
Yeah, worst foul call ever. Yeah.
So you and I both played UMass Lowell. There's 22-1 still out there. What are your thoughts? Number one, I also think it's actually maybe an advantage for UMass Lowell to play Maine again, right? Back on the same court. Maine has unique defense, and turnovers are an issue for UMass Lowell. So I think like that familiarity playing this team again at the same, that could help them. But what are your thoughts on number one, this matchup, Maine, the Riverhawks? I'll let you kind of ramble away there.
Yeah, Lowell's the pick to win the tournament. They're going to turn. I think they're going to turn it around. I think they're going to make a movie about this team called 3 Days in March. Like I said, I got them 30-1. I think 20-1 is better. I think that price is way too long. I think it's crazy. Now, Coach Pat Duquette, is rightfully taking a lot of shit for how he handled things this year. Quincy Clark, he quit on the team. He stormed out in practice one day and never came back. Makai Gray, a forward transfer from NJIT, quit on the team, never came back. I don't know why Caleb Murphy doesn't get more run at point. There are some crazy rumors out there about how he handled the end of the Connor Withers tenure. And this entire team, I don't think they like each other. I don't think any of them are coming back next year. I mean, I know a lot of them are seniors, but I think there's one kid, Anthony Blunt, that might be coming back. That said, Lowell has shortened this rotation. They're playing 6 guys, sometimes 7, but I think they're playing tougher now. I mean, I think they cut some of the fat and some of the chemistry and continuity issues, even if it wasn't in the most delicate of fashions. Their biggest issue early in the conference season was pure effort, particularly in 50-50 balls, but really on the boards, where they were destroyed both ways. But they've looked tougher rebounding lately. They're plus 20 in rebounding differential over the past 5 games. They're 3rd in the league in defensive rebounding rates since February, which includes Vermont, who's like the best defensive rebounding team in the nation. They, more importantly, as you mentioned, they are an elite offense with loads of talent. They still run a lot of flex motion stuff where Max Brooks and Cam Morris just hammer the rim. Quentin Mincy, arguably the best 3-level scoring forward in the conference. He's averaging over 20 points per game over his last 5. And all 3 of those guys will just post you up on the block and take you. But they've added a legit perimeter offensive threat in Martin Somerville, the 11-time America East Freshman of the Week, which is a record, by the way. High major scoring guard. I'm serious. He will be a high major transfer next year, masquerading as a Riverhawk. He's a stud ball screen orchestrator, turning into the table setter that this offensive needed. He's averaging over 7 assists per game in his past 5. He dropped a program record 13 dimes against UMBC, and he shoots 40% from 3. That gives the Riverhawks like 3 elite shooters, if you throw in Mincy, Yuri Covington, and Somerville, to combine with 3 elite interior big men threats and a legit point guard. They are an awesome offense. But of course, you mentioned awful defense. They run drop coverage stuff. So they funnel on-ball creation into the middle of the court, but they do nothing to stop the dribble because Covington and Somerville are small, exploitable perimeter defenders. Brooks is an amazing interior defender, but Mincy and Morris are super vulnerable in that area. So their rim defense kind of sucks overall. That said, the drop still denies the 3 well, and they don't foul, which is really important when they're running such a short rotation on top of the extra rest time that you talked about. And I actually think their transition defense has improved a ton recently, which I think will help with their likely path being Maine and then Bryant. And if you put it all together, Lowell posted the league's 3rd best efficiency mark in February, the league's 2nd best offense. They rank 6th nationally in effective field goal percentage over the past 7 games. They're scoring at will. Even if their defense still sucks, they're doing a few things right on that end where they could win every game 90-89. And they could be due for some positive regression.
Yeah, and they're due to win some games by 1.
Yeah, let's talk about that. They're due for more regression on defense too. I mean, conference opponents have made 40% of their threes, something like that. During this 7-game stretch where they've had a 70% effective field goal percentage or something, Lowell went 2-5. They're the opposite of Michigan, the most snake-bitten team in the nation. 3 of their last 4 losses have come by exactly 1 point. One on the worst late game foul call we've ever seen against Bryant. I mean, what was it? Earl Timberlake ran down the floor, didn't get fouled, and then got sent to the line with no time left. They blew a 17-point lead with under 8 minutes left against New Hampshire and then lost on a buzzer-beating 3 by Sammy Pieces. They blew late leads and lost in overtime against Albany and Maine. Both were fantastic losses. I mean, in the Albany game, they missed 3 front ends and turned it over twice in the final minute after leading by 6 with 70 seconds left. In the Maine game, they led by 4 with 40 seconds left, but Quincy Clark, our guy, fouled AJ Lopez on a layup for an and one and then threw the ball away to Lopez on the rebound to end up losing by 1. They went 1-9 this year in games decided by 5 or fewer points.
5 or less. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the same time, their only 3 wins recently were unrelenting blowouts of Binghamton and UMBC. This team can beat anyone on talent and offensive loan, which they've proven. The path, I mean, yes, their first round matchup is against Maine. They lost both games to the Bears by 1 point, like you said. They should have won the first battle. They led by double digits at half. They had that collapse. They need to clean up the turnovers. I mean, they turned it over 19 times on Tuesday. But any improvement in that area, like you said, seeing them a third time, seeing that same scheme.
Because Maine will zone, will pressure you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But Lowell's a great zone offense with their playmaking forwards. And on top of that, if you can avoid turnovers against Maine, you can get them at the rim because they play extended and they have no size in the interior. Not to mention they're terrible on the defensive boards. So if you can just get it down low to Mincy, Morris, and Brooks, I think you can rip Maine apart at the interior. And also Maine kind of trended down a bit more and more as the season has progressed. And then if they win that matchup and they go play Bryant on the road, we just said it. They should have
94 to 93.
Yeah, they should have beaten them.
They could play their game at least, right? Against
they should have beaten them 79-78 2 weeks ago. I mean, they've been rebounding way better, so they can manage the shot volume battle more. And while it's brutal to beat Bryant's defense, like I talked about with UMBC, like Bryant's going to rim funnel you. If you get to the rim and you're crafty with your finishing, you can avoid blocks against this team. In the last matchup, Lowell scored 44 paint points, and they were blocked just 6 times, which is nice but manageable against Bryant. And if they get through to the final, they'll face Vermont, who swept them and crushed them in the second meeting. But it now could be shorthanded without Bogues. I mean, you have to buy them at this price, at anything north of 20-1. They're fully capable of competing with these top teams. I thought they'd be right up there with odds closer to Maine, if we're being completely honest. I mean, there's a reason why they started the season 12-4, looked like the best team in the league for a while. They will play tightly contested games with their awesome offense, bad defense, and hopefully the variance overlords will grant them and us some mercy and some much needed regression to the mean. I think Lowell wins this tournament.
I agree. I think that they're going to beat Lowell. I mean, I think they're going to beat Maine.
Yep.
It's going to be a coin flip game. And if they're catching 1.5 or more, just take, and you want to bet them, don't bet the money line.
Yeah.
Just in case they lose by 1 again. But yeah, it is worth mentioning that Maine would have a easier path to the final because if they win, they'll play Vermont potentially shorthanded instead of Bryant, assuming both of Bryant and
but
Vermont win.
Maine's what, 550, 6-1?
Yeah, no thanks on Maine.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree. Lowell's the play.
Yeah, I mean, my quick notes on Maine. I mean, opponents started making everything against them down the stretch, but I also think like their lack of speed and size just started to catch up to them. I mean, they're Chris Markwood is an amazing head coach, but they're very execution reliant. And I mean, they shot 40% from 3 down the stretch, and they were still a mediocre offense because they don't get to the line, they don't get offensive rebounds, and they shot like 40% from 2-point range. You know, they scored 0 in the paint. And their ball screen motion sets collapsed down the stretch just as teams started to adjust and figure out their execution stuff. They averaged under 0.5 point per possession on pick and rolls over a 5-game stretch between the UMBC and New Hampshire games. And their defense, while still amazing at the point of attack, like I said, it gets shredded at the rim and on the defensive glass because they have no size. They play so extended. It's overall effective defensive scheme, but it's not unbeatable. So I'm kind of out on Maine entering this tournament, if we're being honest, which is part of the reason why we both like Lowell, right?
Yep. All right, we're in lockstep with both the Big Sky and the America East. By the way, if you're looking for Saturday, we'll have a live show. I'll have a write up. A couple other spots that I wanted to mention. It might be a corpse. NC State, Miami, that's Battle of the Corpses. I can't wait for that game at noon. Cincy might be a corpse at Oklahoma State. I might look to bet Kansas at home against Arizona. Maybe Marquette against St. John's. I might look to bet Harvard against Dartmouth. Dartmouth has nothing to play for there.
I've been the king of the fade Dartmouth train this year, unsuccessfully.
Harvard coming off that Yale win last game of the year at home. I could see it. To Richmond at home against George Mason. I think George Mason's just going through the motions right now. They know they're not. Just look at their over the past week against Duquesne, last night against LaSalle. I think Richmond will have value on Saturday. Another one, Tarleton State on Saturday against Utah Valley. Utah Valley wins every road game by like 1. They've been so lucky on the road. They're a different team away from home. Tarleton State is a different team right now. I'll talk whack on Sunday. But Freddie Hicks is back. He's a major difference maker. They didn't have Grimes, the Baylor transfer, for their first 15 games. The games that Hicks and Grimes didn't play this year, and there's many, this is a bottom 20 team. When they're both in there, they're completely different. And this team is completely different at home.
Yeah, they've been hidden by injuries, right?
Yeah, but with Hicks and Grimes, they're
that's enough.
Significantly better.
Yeah.
Now, the wrench in this is I don't know why this happened. They go to Cal Baptist tonight and have to come home to play Utah Valley, who's playing tonight at Abilene Christian, which is an hour down the road. So, the travel disadvantage is huge for Tarleton. You're supposed to have, home and away and away. I don't know who crafted this schedule, but it's an awful, awful travel spot for the home team on the Saturday game. It's supposed to be it's awful. Anyway, those are 3 I had circled. We'll have write-ups. Tanner will have write-ups. We'll have our live show. Do you have anything you wanted to mention for Saturday? I doubt you even dug in yet.
Nope. Just waiting for
a lot of it's TBD. We're gonna have conference tournament matchups. We don't even know them.
Yep. Just waiting for the Lowell game. Just excited for the Lowell game.
Waiting for Lowell. By the way, Dartmouth 6-2 in February. Opponent shooting 21% from 3.
The Big Green Ponzi
Best in the
team.
nation. It'll be Cornell Dartmouth in Ivy Madness, by the way, and then it'll most likely be Yale Princeton. Brown needs a win plus a Dartmouth win plus a Penn win to get in. Before we get out of here, though, with the Southland, start to Mike Calabrese for his thoughts there.
Thanks, Stuck. It's time to talk Southland, and this has been a proud low major conference. 3 of their last 10 conference champions have gone to March Madness and won a game in the round of 64. In 2016, Stephen F. Austin was a bucket away from going to the Sweet 16. So this is not just a speed bump for the major players in March Madness to get an easy auto win and head to the round of 32. So where does it start this season? It's all about McNeese and Will Wade. Will Wade forced out of LSU, his tenure ending in Baton Rouge in basically the worst way possible. He's under the cloud of NCAA investigation, then he gets hit with some Tier 1 violations, gets a show cause penalty. It seemed as though he may need to go overseas to continue his coaching career, but he very quickly was able to turn things around, gets a job in the same state in Louisiana, and he's led McNeese to back-to-back SLC regular season titles and #1 seeds in the conference tournament. And that's critical because of the format. The top 2 teams get an auto bye to the semis, and McNeese will be playing this whole thing on their home floor. So the question comes down to price. There's really 3 teams that I think have the goods potentially if everything shakes out right to win this thing. McNeese, as I mentioned, minus 550, even for a team playing on their home floor, even for a team that has such a strong identity. When you look year over year, they lose Shahada Wells, but somehow they get even better on the defensive end. And a big part of it is they force turnovers, 19% of opponent possessions end in a turnover. They give up nothing in transition because they play at a very slow, methodical pace on the offensive end. Now, you can get the best of them in their front court, And that's where I turn to a team like Lamar. Lamar has the size to be able to take advantage of McNeese. They have 2 players over 6'9" in their rotation. And if they can beat him on the offensive glass and cut down on their turnovers, as they did in their March 1st meeting with the Cowboys, a 2-point loss there, I think that they could get over the hump. At 12-1, Lamar, I'll come back to them in just a moment. Let's talk about the other team, the 3 seed, who's going to need to win in the quarters, the semis, and the title game likely against McNeese. And that is Nicholls State, the only team to beat McNeese this entire season. And while I was excited to dig into some of their advanced stats, the thing of it is, yes, they beat McNeese. But in that game, the Cowboys shot 0 for 12 from 3-point range, and Nicholls State shot over 50%. That kind of 3-point variance is just not going to happen again, particularly with a bid to March Madness on the line on their home floor. I have more faith in McNeese than that. So let's look at Lamar once again. I talked about the front court, what they can do on the offensive glass, but it really comes down to Alexis Marmolejos. He is their primary ball handler. He's a knockdown 3-point shooter. He can get to the line upwards of 10 times in a game because he drives and is aggressive in transition. And he was able to handle the McNeese pressure. In the 2 meetings this year, he had 35 points, but critically just 4 turnovers. And he's a fearless kid. Early in the season, they went to College Station and played Texas A&M. He dropped 23 points on the Aggies in a losing effort. So I view him as the difference maker here. And at 12-1, I think there's a lot of value here because if you look at where the point spreads were set in the first 2 meetings with McNeese, I think this will probably come down 10, 11 point spread, and the money line would be in that plus 450, plus 475 window. Getting them at 12-1, needing only to win in the semis to get there, I think that's the way to go about it here. So I will pass on McNeese at minus 550. My official play is Lamar at 12-1 to win the Southland.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, at 12-1, I could only take Lamar, but McNeese State really got a break. I'm not betting McNeese State at minus 550. That's outrageous, but they get to play at home, and Northwestern State got the 4 seed. Like Texas A&M, Corpus Christi would have been a little tougher of a matchup, but I mean they're going to be double-digit favorites in both games. Good luck, Mike. I will not be touching the Southland. I hope McNeese gets in because they're they'll make the field much more interesting than any other of the teams in the Southland. But yeah, if I had to take one, it's Lamar or nothing. At 12, it had to be 12-1 or better. All right, that'll do it for us. Thanks to Mike for Southland thoughts. Thanks, of course, to Tanner for rambling along with me. We only went an hour and 10, which is good.
Thought it'd be longer, yeah.
I thought it would be longer. But that's a long time for 2 leagues. Usually do like 4 in an hour 10. But that's what you can expect when it's Tanner and I on the same episode rambling away as we do. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Live show Saturday. I will not be sleeping for the next 6 weeks, but especially the next 6 days. I will be doing 12 conference previews across 3 podcasts on Sunday with the guys from the 3-Man Weave, and then 5 more on Monday with Mike and Greg. So
best time of year.
It's a labor of love, and daily cards to cap, and then watching basketball all day. I love it. There will be no sleep, but make sure you tune in because we'll have you covered on every single conference tournament across the board. 3 more episodes out on Monday, and then that last episode, which will cover the rest, will be out late Monday night, early Tuesday morning. But thanks for tuning in. By the way, my Chicago people, see my Twitter. I expect to see you Elite 8 Saturday. We have a live event. Myself and Jim Root will be doing a live Elite 8 preview. It's at Joe's on Weed Street. Rented the place out, drinks, watch the games, hopefully win some money. Excited to see some of you I've met before and meet some new friends and followers and listeners of this podcast. Let's have a March. Good luck on all of your wagers. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. You know the deal. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. 5-star reviews really help us out. Let's go Riverhawks. We'll catch you all later. Cheers.